Welcome to Talking Politics. I'm your host this evening, Mia Scanga. And tonight you were to meet two of the four candidates running for mayor for Jersey City. The incumbent, Jeremiah Healy, I reached out to the campaign manager via cell phone and email, never got a response back, which is very typical. As for Abdul Malik, I just found out about your certification the day before through a listing compiled by the city, which does not include email or phone numbers. As for Jerry Walker's team, well, I was in contact with the campaign manager numerous times over the course of the week via cell phone and email, and even sent a confirmation or reminder email Friday evening because we shoot on Saturday mornings. And we waited 40 minutes for Jerry Walker. And finally, through numerous phone calls, he called me back and said he didn't know anything about it. I don't know. So anyway, unfortunately, Stephen Fulop did show up on time, and I had promised all the candidates they'd be out within an hour since it is a 28-minute show. So this is a very short show, and I think in the process of all the confusion and everything with Jerry Walker, we lost the intro. It never recorded properly. Probably a camera malfunction of the tape or what have you. So that's why I'm doing this now. And, Stephen he said he would come back, but I really needed to get this done this weekend. So anyway, this is the balance of the show, and thank you very much for tuning in. Get going, right? And we have Stephen Fulop, who's here, has always been here for our shows. And he's our current councilman for Ward E, and he's running for mayor. So Steve, why don't you give a brief intro to our audience?
My name is Stephen Fulop. I'm running for mayor of Jersey City. I love Jersey City. I love the culture. I love the diversity. I love the neighborhoods. When people ask me about how do I feel about the current administration, I actually say that I like Jerry Healy individually. I just look at Jersey City and I say that there's a lot of systematic problems that need to be addressed. When you look at the last 8 years, you talk about taxes that have nearly doubled. You talk about police manpower that's at a near historic low. You talk about crime rates that are increased. You talk about senior services that have decreased, recreation services that have decreased. When you look at it in its totality, you talk about things that should be up or down and things that are down should be up. And Jersey City is really at a crossroads. And this election is not only going to shape how the city looks for the next 4 years or 8 years, but it's literally going to shape how the city looks for the next generation. And this city has an opportunity to really be the greatest mid-sized city in the country because we have a lot of things here that you can't replicate with today's dollars. So the stakes are very high for this election, and I'm excited and thankful to be a part of it.
Okay. One thing I want to clarify, because occasionally I'll go on to JC List or NJ.com and see some of the comments. When we say that the taxes have doubled under Healy, the last time I looked it was up 85%, could be 90%. We're talking about the municipal taxes, okay? So there's three components in a tax bill. There's municipal, school, as well as county, because people try to, they misunderstand that. So I just want to clarify that. He controls the municipal portion, and that has doubled under his tenure, and while services have decreased, there's no doubt. Well, one of the big issues that the taxpayers are going to be facing is the upcoming reval. Yep. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it's going to be the most disruptive thing and problematic issue for taxpayers over the next couple of years. This is not going to be an easy thing for taxpayers. If it was going to be a good thing, Jerry Healy would have done it before the election. Instead, he delayed it till after the election.
He didn't want to be another Tony Cucci.
Perhaps. The county didn't tell Jersey City to do this reval. It was self-imposed. The mayor asked for it. And I think there are a couple of things that need to happen in order to make it less disruptive. We need to pursue illegal buildings in order to increase the ratables that you have in the city. I think we need to continue to address the structural deficit that continues to exist in the city. And you could do that by continuing to go after auditing some of the tax abatements, which we just started to do this year. We've already found $11 million. So
due to one or two city employees who didn't do their job. That's what really it boils down to, which always brings up the issue about civil service and the quality of employees we get. So he didn't do his job, and it cost the city $10-11 million. Right. So when people say, the white collar jobs aren't of importance, they are. They are. Of course, I'm a finance person, so I'm prejudiced to that. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it will be very distressing. I went through it the last time. All the values of the city plummeted, then people went out and appealed their taxes, and then the city did tens of millions of dollars of bonding, because people may not realize that when the city does lose and they reduce the valuation, the city ends up, which is us, ends up paying for the city and county taxes 100%.
True.
So we're doing a lot of bonding to cover those city and county taxes that were now no longer due and payable by that taxpayer. So is there anything that can be done, or aside from auditing the tax abatement? I mean, this really says something about tax abatements then, because at this point in time, we're pretty much built up. And if the 1 to 4 family homeowner without a tax abatement gets slaughtered, that means that like we've been saying all along, the tax abated buildings don't pay their fair share.
I mean, the concern is really the long-time residents.
Or the cost of government's too high.
When I knock on people's doors campaigning, the number one concern that people say in this election are their taxes, that they talk about the fact that they've been a long-time resident, they've been here generation after generation. Some of the seniors are on fixed income. And they're realistic. They said they're not going to get a job at Duane Reade at this point in their life. They're not going to go get some part-time job.
Not in this economy.
They're on fixed income, and they say that they're terrified because after each of the last 2 elections, you've seen massive tax increases, and this time, it looks to be a similar situation as an election year budget versus a post-election year budget, and then it's compounded by the fact that we have a revow looming. So people are terrified, and this election is going to chart the course on how these things are dealt with. So there's a lot at stake. There's no question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It took years for the city to recover last time.
Yeah.
And probably $60-70 million worth of bonding on top of it. And now we're back to almost where we were back then in terms of total valuation. What are some of the other major issues? What about crime?
So look, I think that, Jerry Healy and I would have a disagreement on crime. When I think about crime, I think about, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the NAACP meeting on Forest Street. It's at Mount Pisgah Church. 7 p.m. was the start of the meeting, and at 7 p.m., as I was pulling in, there was a van of after-school leaving from the church and after-school program, 12 children in there, and a bullet flew through the glass. It was in the Jersey Journal. Luckily, nobody was hit, but those sort of things happening speaks volumes. Wow. And when people say that, when the mayor points to crime being down because he points to the murder rate, he's omitting the fact that certain parts of the city have seen massive increases, certain aspects of crime have seen massive increases. When you look at police manpower, we are at an all-time low. Last year, there's been nearly 2,000 violent crimes per uniform crime statistics. So there's a couple of things that you could do on restructuring the police department today that would not cost taxpayers extra dollars, but increase visibility, putting more police officers on the street. You would remove them from some of the desk jobs and the clerk jobs that exist today. I'm a big proponent of decentralization of command, which basically means that you're going to hold the precinct commanders more accountable because you're going to give them the resources within their control in order to pursue whether it be gangs or drugs or narco. So there are structural changes that you can do where Jerry and I disagree, and you increase accountability, and it won't be any additional cost to the taxpayers on
And also the police department historically, and that about the desk jobs, I did a study many, many years ago, and it was absurd, the number of desk jobs. I mean, you can just go into internal affairs, or even when you get police reports. The guy was making $90,000 plus benefits, and you paid him $2 for a police report. That could be done by a civilian at a third of the cost,
That's right.
And then the radio room, we've got a couple of guys making $200,000 a year because of the excessive overtime. There's a lot of excessive overtime that goes on. There's very little accountability as well, but it just never seems to change. We talk about these issues all the time. It just never seems to change. And also, we're too top heavy. That was the other point. It seems like there's just too many, captains and too many promotions, and then they go, I guess, from sergeant to lieutenant, which means they're off the street.
Well, not necessarily off the street, but let me just say what's different when you talk about historical campaigns versus our campaign is that our campaign has taken the step, the only one out of all the mayoral candidates or the council candidates, to put forward a concrete platform in detail. So we're not just using buzzwords or platitudes. What we are saying is, here's how we're going to change the police department so that there are more police on the street. Here's what we're going to do for education and recreation and senior services and taxes. And you could see that on the website, stephenfulop.com, and that's actually in detail. And we've gone out there because we want the taxpayers and the residents to be clear about what our commitment is to Jersey City and what they can expect should we get elected. We're trying to run a campaign that's not just based on name recognition and who's the most popular guy or girl. What we're trying to do is say, here's what we're going to do to make Jersey City better. And I think that's a real difference between our campaign and any other of the campaigns.
Okay, fine. Now, it's almost budget time. Have they introduced the budget, and have you been able to take a look at it?
We just introduced the budgets. We haven't started with hearings on the director, so it's really early in the process right now.
See, that's supposed to be done in the fall.
Well,
all that work is supposed to be done in the fall. You close your books, and then you put together your budget. But all those hearings are supposed to be done in October, November, and December.
Look, the Councilman Lavarro actually raised the same point several months ago, and he got a lot of pushback where they pointed to legalities in the Faulkner Act, and lawyers could point to any technicality in order to kind of achieve the end result that they're looking to achieve. So here we are. We're in March, and we're going to start the process on the director hearings now. And look, there's a opportunity to actually find some cost savings here.
But the budget was supposed to be introduced by March 15th.
It was introduced by March 15th. It just hasn't been adopted yet.
So they introduced it before they even had the hearings with the department heads on how you want to restructure your department?
So the way they've structured it is that the mayor starts with his hearings in isolation,
okay,
introduces his version of the budget,
right,
comes to the council where we are today.
I see, okay.
And then the council starts with their side of budget hearings and has an opportunity to make some amendments.
All right, okay, so you're talking about the council side of it.
Yeah.
Okay, different story, very different story. Okay, fine. What are some of the other issues that you see?
Look,
you've been at City Hall now for 8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. Look, when you talk about crime, and we touched on that a little bit, and that's obviously a major issue. You talk about taxes. You talk about the education opportunity. And Jersey City is kind of in a unique place as it relates to, we have new leadership in the Board of Education. You have a governor in Trenton who's always talking or the potential risk of more of the tax burden being shifted to some of the urban areas, right, which would have a huge impact on the taxpayers here. You have a lot of people who believe in the Jersey City public education's potential and are wanting to stay in Jersey City. And there's an opportunity from the city standpoint to be a better support mechanism for the education system, whether that's through recreation services, whether that's through after-school programs, keeping the gyms open later. There are a lot of ways that the city can work hand in hand when you talk about education in order to kind of talk to another aspect of concern for next year, whether it's, again, taxes, crime, education. And then you talk about just basic quality of life stuff, from traffic to to enforcing litter to sure. There's cleanliness, graffiti, the things that make Jersey City more livable, and the things that should be enforced that today aren't necessarily enforced. So those are like basic things that you start to address, and you put forward comprehensive plans. You can really have an opportunity to really change Jersey City in a real significant way in a real short amount of time.
Well, there's definitely, when I first moved here, which is now 30 years, they had guys that walked around and they gave out tickets if you took out your garbage too early or your sidewalk wasn't clean. But now they seem to all be working for the parking authority and driving up and down the street 25 times looking to tow people,
well, when you talk about
and the streets are as dirty as always, worse.
The enforcement mechanism for some of those quality of life infractions, that has been eliminated. So that is part of a concern, something that we would like to bring back. And yes, when you talk about some of those autonomous agencies like the parking authority, like the incinerator authority, ultimately we'd like to see that come back into city government. So there's an opportunity there to reduce costs for the taxpayer and increase accountability and transparency to actually the taxpayer, which is kind of the end result that we're looking for here.
All right, fine. Now, just very quickly, what's the status of, you were in favor of merging the Jersey City Incinerator Authority with Public Works.
Look, I think the mayor was in favor of it before he wasn't in favor of it. So he was in favor of it when the independent consultants came back and said that we could save between $5 and $10 million. And then once the political pressure started, he backed away from that. I believe it's the right thing to do. I believe that you could keep the employees that work hard, that are doing the work day in and day out, graffiti
Absolutely.
removal, sanitation, that there's no risk to those people, but there's redundancy on the managements.
Absolutely. The
And-
top heaviness again. Exactly.
it's not to say that in some situations the incinerator authority's management is better than the DPW, and in some situations different divisions in the DPW is better than the incinerator authority. So you could look at some of that stuff, and then there's also an opportunity as you redundancy on lawyers and consultants and insurance and engineers, all those professional services that you have, you could eliminate some of those.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we have to cut this short because I did promise Steve that we'd be done within an hour, and we waited like 40 minutes for Jerry Walker. So I have to, keep to my word. So anyway, I appreciate
Thank you,
your
Mia.
being
I
on
appreciate-
time, and
I
I'm sorry
appreciate
we
that.
cut it a little bit short, but he's got a very busy schedule.
I
So
appreciate
thank you so
that.
much
Thank
for
you.
being on.
Thank you for watching.
And you can watch the show on the web for the next number of years, and certainly on Comcast, and we're also on Verizon Bios. And also there's going to be a public debate, right? You
This
have one
Thursday.
scheduled this Thursday?
This Thursday in the Heights.
Okay, where is that going to be?
I gotta look at the calendar.
Okay, well, we'll have it flashed up on the screen for you, so if you'd like to go attend one of the public debates, hopefully all 4 candidates will show for that
I think
one.
they will.
Okay,
Potentially.
wonderful. So thank you very much, and thank you for
you.
watching Talking Politics. Good night.